On this Thursday night, defending Paul Bernardo's prison transfer. The Correctional Services review into the controversial move.
His safety was at risk.
Why the decision won't be overturned. The bottleneck from BC's on-again, off-again port strike. The consequences for consumers. Too hot to handle.
Exposure to excessive heat has wide-ranging impacts for health.
What's known as the wet bulb temperature. Why it's dangerous and where it's happening. And battle off the turf. How Women's World Cup players still haven't scored pay equity, despite a raise.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, the results of a review into the contentious decision to quietly move notorious serial killer and rapist Paul Bernardo from a maximum security facility in Kingston, Ontario to a Quebec medium security prison. It's a move that ignited a political firestorm. The 85-page document all came down to this line. Decisions to reclassify and send Bernardo to La Casa were sound and followed all applicable laws and policies. But as David Akin reports, it's a decision bitterly opposed by Bernardo's victims.
Paul Bernardo has committed horrific and unspeakable crimes.
But despite that, and even though he is a designated dangerous offender, Paul Bernardo will remain at a medium security prison in La Casa, Quebec.
The decisions to reclassify this inmate to medium security and transfer him to La Casa institution were sound and followed all applicable laws and policies.
This 85-page report details how Bernardo specifically asked for La Casa prison. It's a facility which specializes in housing high-profile sexual offenders like Bernardo.
La Casa institution has similar perimeter control as a maximum security institution, including high fences and armed patrols.
Moreover, protecting Bernardo from other inmates at his former maximum security prison in Kingston, Ontario, had become a challenge.
He required a high degree of supervision and control because his safety was at risk.
The families of two of his victims, Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey, strongly opposed the transfer. In a letter, their lawyers said, while principles of rehabilitation are critical and apply to 99% of the federal prison population, they do not to the remaining 1% like Paul Bernardo, who are beyond rehabilitation. That lawyer, Timothy Danson, noted that multiple parole board hearings as recently as 2021 found Bernardo to have deviant sexual interests, a narcissistic personality disorder, and other traits that led psychiatrists to label Bernardo a psychopath. Correctional Services Canada Commissioner Ann Kelly did not disagree.
Despite the fact that he is at a medium security institution, does not negate the fact that he is a psychopath.
And Kelly says new processes are in place to better deal with victims' families in these types of situations.
I regret any pain and concern this transfer has caused.
There is no appeal of this decision. Neither the Minister of Public Safety nor a judge can overturn it. As for Bernardo, he is up for parole yet again in 4 months. Farah.
David Akin in Ottawa. Thank you, David. Toronto City Councillors have voted to declare gender-based violence and intimate partner violence an epidemic in the city. Now, advocates applaud the move, but they do say that more needs to be done.
I believe every woman should have a chance to be free of violence from intimate partners. And I know the people around me are working very hard to make that a reality.
Chow has spoken candidly about the abuse her mother experienced from her father. Toronto joins 30 other municipalities across Ontario that have declared gender-based violence an epidemic. The on-again, off-again strike saga at British Columbia ports appears to be over, at least for the time being. Some 7,400 workers returned to work today after their union withdrew its 72-hour strike notice last night. But as Touria Izri reports, the push is now on for all sides to finally get a deal done and avoid another work stoppage that could cost Canadians even more.
Cargo is moving again at Canada's busiest port, at least for now. Workers are chipping away at the massive backlog in an on-again, off-again strike, tying up $800 million a day in trade.
This strike could not continue.
The union rejected a tentative deal with the employer and then held a one-day walkout. It threatened to escalate the job action over the weekend. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called an emergency meeting Wednesday with cabinet ministers. That same day, the union reversed course and called off the weekend strike. But there's still no concrete resolution.
We're glad to see that the union is reconsidering the good offer that was on the table.
And with no agreement, the bottleneck could keep growing in a 3-week labor dispute over wages and working conditions.
Every one day takes about a week to clear the supply chain. We're into day 20.
Businesses warn supply chains have not fully recovered from the pandemic, and chaos at Canada's main international gateway could take months to recover from.
That's a lot of containers, and it's a cycle.
Manitoba's pork producers ship more than $700 million worth of meat through the West Coast a year.
Chilled pork can't sit on the port or on the dock forever, right? It has to move, and it has a short window to move. And so the cost, if we get outside of that window, is enormous.
And there are concerns the costs could also be higher for consumers.
The hope is that prices won't go up as a result because we're dealing with an inflation problem at the same time. But, that's what happened the last time we ran into supply chain problems.
The union declined our request for an interview, while the federal government would not answer when asked repeatedly whether it would recall Parliament and introduce back-to-work legislation if this labor dispute drags on. Farah?
Touria Izri in Ottawa. Thanks, Touria. It's only the third week in July, and already this is the worst fire season ever recorded in Canada. There are around 885 active wildfires across the country. 600 are out of control, and 11 million hectares of land has burned, 10 times the national average. And the wildfires, they're more intense, more unpredictable, and are causing huge health concerns. As Caryn Lieberman reports, they've also turned deadly.
Canadians have to be very careful, even more careful than they are.
A reminder and a warning about the dire situation in this country as crews from around the world battle the most devastating wildfire season on record.
It's very easy for fires to start, whether from human cause or natural causes.
This one, the Donny Creek wildfire burning in northeastern British Columbia, is now larger than Prince Edward Island. It was sparked by a lightning strike in May.
We're flying detection planes all the time across the province where we know lightning is hit to try to catch these fires as quickly as we can.
The fires are destructive and they're deadly. Near Peace River, Alberta, a helicopter pilot helping fight fires died Wednesday in what officials are calling an accident.
Right now, there are thousands upon thousands of people helping out their neighbors, helping out across the country. And we really need to pause and thank them all and be with the families who've lost loved ones, even as they're trying to keep the rest of us safe. 2
firefighters died in less than a week. 19-year-old Devin Gale in BC and 25-year-old Adam Yedin in the Northwest Territories. The BC Coroner Service also issued a public safety bulletin about wildfire smoke after the death of a young boy with asthma. Carter Vigh was 9.
Just the fact that the smoke got so bad and the heat.
The visibility up here is just, I've never seen it so bad.
With tinder dry conditions, wildfires could grow more intense, but climate change may be the bigger concern moving forward.
In BC, we are unfortunately becoming accustomed to forest fires, but this year they've arrived even earlier, and they're made more significant because of widespread drought conditions we're experiencing across the province.
In June, the federal government announced a national climate change adaptation plan with the support of all provinces and territories. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change said it's a way to ensure Canada is as prepared as possible to keep the impacts of climate change at a minimum. Farah.
Caryn Lieberman in Toronto. Thank you, Caryn. Climate talks in Beijing have ended without any major new commitments from China or the United States. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry says more work is needed to reach agreements on major climate issues.
This is not a one-off meeting. We are already pinpointing the time for our next meeting and then even the next one after that. recognizing that we have only about 4 months before the COP.
There had been a stretch of near radio silence between the world's two biggest polluters, with tension over Taiwan canceling previous meetings. Kerry says China did agree that countries should strive to limit global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, and that the world has to reduce its reliance on coal. And in the U.S. Southwest right now, record heat is filling up emergency rooms. Officials say people are being treated for second-degree contact burns from touching pavement that, in some cases, has reached 70 degrees Celsius. Experts say temperatures are also staying hotter for longer. Jamie Morocco looks into how much heat is too hot to handle for humans.
It's been so hot in Texas this week, neither water or shade is providing much relief from the extreme heat.
I usually run, but in this heat, no.
Some areas in the southern U.S. are treading dangerously close to a critical wet bulb temperature, a measurement that describes the point at which water on a thermometer bulb or sweat from a human stops evaporating. Originally thought to be 35 degrees, recent research suggests 31 degrees Celsius with 100% humidity is the point our bodies can't physically cool down. Cold water! Earlier this month, nearly all of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas were under this extreme threat. Heat that's getting global attention.
Exposure to excessive heat has wide-ranging impacts for health, often amplifying pre-existing conditions and resulting in premature death and disability.
Experts say when exposed to the elements, humans can only survive the highest wet bulb temperatures for 6 hours.
Those are extremes you never want to be at, right? I mean, these are stressful temperatures. In many cases, that nighttime signal is even stronger, is an even clearer evidence of global warming.
Even when it's dark, temperatures aren't coming down as they should. Scientists suggest without access to other cooling methods, extreme wet bulb temperatures could make places like India and Pakistan uninhabitable. In the U.S., it will mean more pressure on our cities.
When it's really hot out, people want to use more air conditioning, and that can place stress on the electricity system. We see similar things for water and other kinds of infrastructure.
Systems we simply cannot survive without in this type of heat, highlighting how reliant we have become and how delicate our civilization is. Jamie Morocco, Global News, Houston.
In the heart of South Africa's biggest city, a huge explosion killed at least one person and injured 48 others during Johannesburg's evening rush hour. The blast ripped open roads and flipped more than 20 cars. The explosion was so strong, an area the size of about 5 city blocks was damaged. Now, it's still unclear what caused the explosion, but it's believed an underground gas pipe ruptured. The streets being closed and the local electricity supply shut off over concerns a second explosion could occur. The warnings of a crisis on the way. Coming up, the potential ramifications of Ukraine's collapsed grain export deal. For the third straight night, emergency crews in Ukraine worked to douse fires and tend to the injured as Russian air attacks targeted the country's southern port cities. In Mykolaiv, children were among the nearly 20 people injured after a 3-story residential building was hit. And in Odessa, at least 2 deaths have been reported following Russian airstrikes. Russia's attacks are happening at the same time and the same week it terminated a wartime deal that allowed Ukraine to export grain through key Black Sea ports. World leaders are now warning of a looming global food crisis, with wheat prices already on the rise. Crystal Gamansing looks at what some say needs to be done to keep the food supply strong for millions of people.
As one of the world's top grain producers, it's pivotal Ukraine's products get to market.
What we already know is that this is going to create a huge food crisis in the world.
It's a grim warning from the European Union's foreign policy chief. The price of wheat has jumped not only in Europe, but the U.S. Still, experts say it's only about half of the record price set last year.
It's summertime as well, which means we're in weather markets, which adds a little bit of additional uncertainty to the markets. And so I don't think anybody really knows what Putin is going to do next week. So that's part of the volatility we face.
On Monday, Russia pulled out of a deal brokered by Turkey, which ensured safe passage of cargo ships carrying Ukrainian grain. That deal brought down grain prices in 2022, cooling dire warnings like the ones being conveyed now.
If the sea route is closed, we will have to increase the capacity of exporting Ukrainian grain through our ports, which means a bigger effort for the neighbor Ukraine.
Speaking from Pakistan, a regular importer of Ukrainian grain, the foreign minister says rail deliveries won't be enough.
Land corridors cannot export full amount of cereals available for export. This is the issue, which means that prices will go up because of the shortage of delivery.
Ukraine is now matching Russia's threat, saying cargo ships in the Black Sea heading to Russia would be viewed as possibly carrying military cargo, meaning they could be targeted. But it's people in poorer nations like Lebanon and Ethiopia that rely on Ukrainian grain who are also in the crosshairs and desperate for a resolution. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Ahead, the hunt for a wild animal believed to be on the loose in Berlin. Police in Berlin are on the hunt for a dangerous animal believed to be an escaped pet lioness. Authorities were first alerted overnight of what appeared to be a wild boar and a lion chasing each other on the outskirts of the German capital. Residents in the area are being asked to stay indoors as police search with night vision and thermal imaging equipment. Comic-Con has kicked off in San Diego, and attendance seems high despite the fact that it's even less star-studded than usual. Hollywood studios are scaling back their presence at the convention due to multiple ongoing strikes, which prohibit writers and actors from promoting studio-contracted work. Some fans see it as an opportunity for the event to return to its comic book roots. More than 130,000 people usually attend the expo every year. Astronomers have discovered a first-of-its-kind star with two faces. Researchers from UBC say its surface completely changes from one side to the other. Half is hydrogen and the other half is helium. The star rotates on its axis every 15 minutes and was spotted 1,300 light years away during a routine scan for dying stars. Astronomers say it may be undergoing a rare phase of evolution. Playing for equal pay. Next, the labor dispute on the sidelines of the Women's World Cup. Canada is in that group, with the Canadian women beginning their quest to win the World Cup tonight with a match against Nigeria. The two teams are entering the tournament with similar pay equity battles. And as Mike Armstrong reports, several countries are using the event to call for a level playing field.
There is a message in this ad, but one you don't see at first. It's supposed to be highlights from France at last year's Men's World Cup. But then a bit of trickery is revealed. The players were all actually from the French women's team. It's a call on the country to support Les Bleus, as they're called, because the soccer skills are there. While one of the most skilled teams, the 7th-ranked Canadians, posed for their team picture Thursday and then got back to preparing for their first match. The players are having to put their bitter pay equity battle with Canada Soccer on the shelf for now. They've been fighting for equal pay and equal support as the men's team. The women have been without a labor deal since 2021. There was hope the new one would be signed before this tournament. That didn't happen, but they're close.
It's done. We're just not focused on it anymore. It's, about to get done, so...
Now, other teams are struggling with the same issue. In fact, that includes Canada's opponents for its first game, Nigeria.
Right now, all of our focus has been on Canada.
The distractions have been a problem for Nigeria's coach and for the players. The team had talked about boycotting its first match over its own pay dispute.
It can be difficult to focus at times, but as a team, we know what we came here for, and that's to play football.
It's been humbling and life-changing for all of us.
But we're not stopping now.
One of the co-host teams in the tournament released a video this week. The Australian women are calling out, among other things, the gender disparity in World Cup prize money. The total prize pool for all the players is $144 million. That's about a quarter of what the men played for last year.
Every single player in this tournament deserves the world and deserves the equal treatment from their federations.
Now, FIFA has said each player will make at least $40,000, but the group that represents professional players says about a third of the teams don't have collective agreements and that there's no guarantee the money the players have been promised will get to them. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
And that's Global National for this Thursday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole crew here, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Air Canada is this rare spirit bear near Terrace, British Columbia. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.